Hi, this is Crystal Hardison from Southeastern Livingston Center. I'm the director, and you are listening to Local Leaders, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Tricia Johnston, residential realtor with Ladder & Bloom with your real estate tip of the week. Today I'd like to share some information about a bond money program being offered by the Louisiana Housing Corporation that gives home buyers up to 4% of the purchase price in assistance. On a $250,000 house, that's $10,000 that can be used towards a down payment or closing costs. You don't need to be a first-time home buyer, but you cannot have owned a home during the past 3 years. You need to have a credit score of 640 or higher, and the interest rate is 2.99% regardless of whether you get FHA, conventional, rural development, or VA financing. The maximum purchase price is $271,000, and it can be used for the purchase of new construction or an existing resale home. If you have any questions or would like additional information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and I'll be happy to help. I'm Tricia Johnston with Ladder & Bloom, and I'll be back here next week with another real estate tip for you.
Hi folks, I want to tell you about Denham Springs Fit Body Boot Camp and their 28-day, $77 Jumpstart program. There's no strings attached and really no reason not to try. You can be in and out in just 30 minutes, and best of all, these 30-minute sessions are scheduled throughout the mornings and evenings to fit your busy schedule. These 30-minute sessions are fun, positive, encouraging, and you can even sign up online. Just visit getfitdenhamsprings.com. Denham Springs Fit Body Boot Camp, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Local Leaders, the podcast. I'm Jim Chapman, and today I'm joined by Missy Williams of Affordable Labs. How are you?
Doing great.
I'm excited to have you on Local Leaders, the podcast today.
I'm excited too.
We had a great conversation when we first met, and I'm going to tell all y'all this is an interesting business, and it's a great concept of something you may not realize. We're going to get into all of that. But first, we want to talk about a little bit of your personal life. You were born and raised in Denham Springs?
Well, so I'm not quite raised. I'm from Denham Springs. We moved a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But came back here when I was like in junior high and then settled it and stayed. So my elementary school years, we were all over, pretty much all over, like from Sunset to Covington and back, So
yeah. But this is home. Yeah.
This is home. Absolutely.
This is home. And you're married? You're not single and ready to mingle?
Not single and mingle. It's way too much effort.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And you have 6 children and 3 grandchildren.
Yes, so we are a blended family.
Yeah.
I have 2 of my own, and my husband Eric has 4 of his own. So he started earlier than I did in life. I was a late bloomer with kids. So we have 6 altogether. And then, of course, we have 3 grandbabies.
Wow.
And all of our kids are here with us local. So everybody's in Denham, Watson, So
love it.
We see them all the time. It's good.
Love it. And you enjoy painting. Now, what type of painting? House painting or like picture painting?
Well, so I do acrylic, right?
Okay,
So I do acrylic painting on canvas mostly. I enjoy the creativity of that. However, I love to paint like walls, like cutting in, that's like therapeutic, just the drawing of the line, that kind of stuff. So I enjoy both, but typically I do canvas painting.
Fantastic. It's amazing with painting. I also like to paint, but I like to paint furniture, things like that. And, chalk paint them or whatever and really make them pretty again. But it's therapeutic. It's kind of like my relaxing of my mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Now what makes me nervous is cabinets. Painting cabinets that's a whole different beast.
Yeah, yeah.
I can roller a wall up and down and over. I can do that.
That's easy. Yeah, cabinets can be tricky.
Absolutely.
They really can. You play piano.
Yes.
Really?
So and that's one of the instruments I play. When I was 15, I went to a piano teacher. because I play by ear mostly, right? So I don't actually like sit down with like the orchestra music and read all that stuff. So I play by ear. So if I hear it, I basically pick it out on the piano.
Wow.
So, but she kind of taught me how to hone my skills and figure out, chord progression and stuff like that. But so yes, I've played piano since I was about 15.
And you picked up, you started hitting keys. You
Yes.
kind of knew from the sound.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like Mozart or something. That's impressive.
Not quite. Not quite.
Not quite that good. Awesome. Well, you have an amazing business that we're going to get into. You're a phlebotomist. And
Phlebotomist.
Yeah, that.
Right.
What did I say? Phlebotomist? Oh, that's horrible. And I practiced it
Phlebotomist.
like the wrong way 500 times last night. I'm like, phlebotomist. So how do you say it?
Phlebotomist.
Phlebotomist. That's as bad as
It's
I say.
almost like phlegm, but so it's phleb instead of phlegm.
Phlebotomist.
Botomist.
Botomist.
Phlebotomist.
Lord, y'all. She's that.
I've been called a lobotomist.
Yeah,
No, we don't do that either.
Yeah, you don't want to be a
A
lobotomist.
phlebotomist,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a hard word for a lot of people. Basically, I'm a glorified vampire. So I'm
That's
a vampire.
awesome. Yeah. And it's funny. I say realtor and it's actually realtor.
Yes.
And the only people that ever correct me are realtors.
Right.
Everybody else says
It's like
realtor.
realtor, yeah.
Yeah, realtor. It's a realtor. No, I'm not a realtor. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you have a great story on how you became a phlebotomist.
Right.
Is that right?
It's close, yeah.
Regarding your son, who was young at the time.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So at the time, my oldest son, he was right about 5. And he had to have some lab work. He was having some medical problems, and they were just trying to make sure his kidney function was right and things like that. So, took him into the local hospital lab. And, of course, at 5, they're scared. They don't know, like, what's happening. And, hey, here's a needle, buddy.
Yeah.
And, they're terrified. So
Right.
I have him sitting in the chair. And, of course, I got his younger brother in tow, so I'm trying to, like, herd cats here, right? So, you sit still, don't touch that,
Right.
that kind of stuff. So, the tech comes in and she's like, okay, we've got to get some blood from you. And I kind of discussed it with my kid. I was like, okay, look, this is a needle. It's like getting a shot,
Yeah.
And he's like, is it going to hurt? Yeah, but not much. It's going to be a pinch. Like, we usually tell them it's like getting an ant bite or a bee sting or something like that. If whatever they've had experience with so far in life.
Sure.
And he had actually already been stung by a bee at one point. So I was like, remember when you got stung by the bee? It's kind of like that, but you got to sit real still because she's got to stick that needle in a very small spot. So if you move and she can't get in the spot, then she's got to do it again. So we're going to sit real still. And he's like, okay. So he sat still and, she's like, okay, no problem. And she stuck him and nothing came out. And he was like, oh, and he was like, okay, well, that's not bad. Well, then, moving it around. Well, moving around hurts, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the field, we call that digging around, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, don't dig me. Some people like, and she jugged me. We hear all sorts of terms, but whatever you want to call it, that's what she was doing.
Oh, wow.
And it was like trying to find it and just fishing around for it. And he just starts welling up with tears. And he's like, ah. And I was like, all right, buddy, okay. She's, just give her a minute. She's going to find it. It's going to be okay. And she's like, yeah, I can't find it. So she stops and she's like, I'm going to have to do it again. So after 4 attempts, she finally got it.
Oh, my goodness.
And, and he was a trooper. I mean, he just sat there and was like, silent crying. Cause I said, you have to be still. If you move, it's just going to take longer. Just, I'm like holding his hand. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And he's like troopering through the whole thing and just crying the whole time. And I was like, golly, this is horrible, to see him have to go through that. And I was like, why is it this hard,
Yeah.
And so I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? I know that in America, we have a really bad drug problem, right? And there is IV drug users, and they're like, they're getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody sent them to school.
They're finding veins.
Right? They're like, teenagers, 20-year-olds, they never went to phlebotomy school, and they found it. Like, how did they find it? You went to school,
Right.
So I'm like, people who are not trained get it. Like, it can't be that big of a deal. Like, and I'm always like one of those people, like if I think I can like even somewhat do it, oh, I'm going to try this.
That's right. Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? If I do this, I can be the one that always draws his blood, and I'll make sure I never hurt him and he'll never have to go through that again.
Right.
And and I was interested in it, like, how hard really is it? So then I'm like, I'm going to go to school one day, and so eventually at some point in time, I ended up going to school for it and said, okay,
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I'm sure as a parent, you were like, will you stick him right? Stephanie Berthelot and the crew at SR Enterprise can handle it all, from sheetrock to texture to paint. Give Stephanie a call at 504-432-9284. SR Enterprise, where they spread the paint and you spread the word. Story led to what you're doing now. Not only led to that, but led to business ownership of that particular trade. So just amazing how life kind of comes full circle when you really think about it. Blows my mind sometimes. Now, you have some vast experience in your field. You've been say it.
Phlebotomist.
Yeah, that. Since 2014, and have worked with patients ranging in age from infants to, get this, folks, her oldest patient was 105 years old. 105. What was that like?
And she was very lucid. She was living at her home with her granddaughter, who was retired.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Her granddaughter was
her granddaughter, yes, because remember, she's 105.
Yeah.
So her children were like 80s. I mean, because back in the day, you had kids at 20.
Yeah.
So her kids were in their 80s, and her grandchildren were in their 60s.
Wow.
So her granddaughter was retired, and she was living with her granddaughter. And so she's sitting at the breakfast table eating her oatmeal when I got there, and and so did her blood draw and the whole 9 yards. And everybody always asks, anytime you get somebody who lives to close to 100, even, you're like, hey, what's the secret of a long life?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I said, hey, so I know you probably get this a lot, right? But everybody always has to ask you, what is the secret to a long life? And she looked at me and she said, I do get asked that a lot, and but it's not really all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. And
I was like, yeah. She said, well, a lot of people have died. She said, I've had children who have died. I've had grandchildren who have died. She said, it's not supposed to be that way. So she says, yeah, it's you get to see a lot, but you get to see a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You almost want to sit them people down and just talk about how far the world has come since they were born. Because in her case, there were no cars when, it was horse and buggy and all that kind of, wrap your mind around that. I mean, that's crazy.
Right.
So,
no cell phones, no microwaves, no inside appliances.
Fun fact, after I saw you did that, I'm like, I wonder what the oldest human that ever lived was, because she's got to be close, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
I went on Google and found out that the oldest documented human to ever live was 122 years old.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and Jean Calumet, she was born in 1875 and died in 1997.
Wow.
Wrap your mind around that. Right after the Civil War, and lived till, almost the year 2000. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is.
Imagine what she saw in her life. And they asked her the same question. I got into it, read the whole thing, and they apparently asked her, what is it like living this long? And she was the last member of her family alive. Wow. So everybody had passed away. Yeah. And they were all girls, and some of them didn't get married, so they didn't have kids. So she was the last person with her name, and that's kind of a sad thing when you think about it. But they said at like 115, they checked like her levels and everything, and she was absolutely healthy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And smoked a cigarette every day. Every day after dinner, she would have one cigarette. So maybe that's the trick. We're not recommending smoke cigarettes around here. Don't get us wrong.
Right.
But I thought that was interesting. So you are the owner of Affordable Labs, but you are not the original owner.
Correct.
The business was established in 2004 by Ron and Sarah Jenkins. Mm-hmm. And there's an amazing story here that I want you to tell us about how you eventually came to own Affordable Labs.
Okay. So I had worked for Ron and Sarah as a phlebotomist when, let's see, it was probably like 2015-ish,
Okay. Yeah.
So I was still kind of new in the phlebotomy field, right?
Yeah.
And so went to work for them. They had, mobile technicians that would go out. So he would make you drive out to, I've driven out to like Alabama, New Orleans, all this kind of stuff to draw someone's blood in their home. So and I thought that was interesting, and it was a challenge for me because I had only kind of been in a clinical setting, where you get somewhat healthy people come in. I mean, they're healthy enough to walk through the door.
Yes, right.
So they come in, sit down, you draw their blood, and and that's fine. But it wasn't quite as much of a challenge as as you would see in the field with a elderly person that's bedridden and stuff like that. So that was kind of the option that he had was, hey, this is going to be challenging, and I was like, all right. So I went in for my interview. I had never before on an interview, and surprise, you get to draw my blood. And I was like, what?
Oh.
So, yeah. So he sits down. He says, here, I want you.
Brave man.
I know, right? So on the interview, he sits me down and he says, all right, now here's your tubes that I want you to draw and put them in the right order. And I want you to draw my blood. I'm watching your technique. Now, if you've ever been like, oh God, am I going to miss or not?
Yeah.
That's when you start sweating it on the inside, So
right.
I was like, all right, I got this. It's not going to be bad, So I did all of it. And he said, excellent job. Sounds great. You're hired. And I said, okay, sounds good. So funny enough, as a side note to that, now, whenever I interview, they stick me.
Yeah.
So now
that's interesting. Yeah.
But it's a very telling thing. You find out that they may not really remember the order to draw from school, which is critical.
Mm-hmm.
They may have really bad technique. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm somewhat healthy. I mean, I'm getting older, and but I have decent veins.
We're getting more seasoned. I don't
there
know
you
about
go.
Older.
I'm becoming vintage.
That's right. That's right.
So, but I mean, my veins are good. So I'm thinking, if you really can't get it on me, you're not going to get it on everybody else in the field. This is because this is hard,
Yes.
So I have them stick me now. It's a little rough when you got like 4 and 5 interviews in a day, like, a pincushion by the end of the day.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I want to make sure that when I have somebody and I put them in the field, that I know that they know what they're doing.
Yes.
Because I've had people come in, I've been doing this 20 years. And I was like, I don't know where, like at the morgue, who are you sticking? Because that hurts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of learned that from him. But so he made me stick him, did the blood draw, hired me on. And so I stayed with him for almost 2 years, going out into the field and everything. And at some point in time, business slowed down. They had to let go a few people, and it wasn't as much money as because you only have money coming in whenever you do the work.
Sure.
So it slowed down a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, look, I'll keep you as long as I can, but realistically, I know you probably need a little bit more money for your family." So. Made the decision to kind of go out with a different career, got into insurance sales, totally different.
Yeah.
Just
why not?
Jumped out, did that. So I did that for a little while, but I've always loved, being a phlebotomist. And, Ron was retired military. And he was a medic, so he had a few tricks up his sleeve, and there's a couple of techniques that he taught me. And honestly, I don't know very many people who do those techniques, but it's very valuable in the field.
I can imagine.
And so we do have a couple of clients that they are such a hard draw. They usually go through 5 and 6 people. At any lab with several sticks apiece, and they'll come to me and I'll do these techniques on them and get it the first time, and they're just astounded. But I would have never known that had I not worked with Ron, and he was just huge. Excellent. If Ron couldn't get blood off of you, there was none.
Yeah, yeah.
There was none.
And probably very passionate about what he did.
He was very passionate. So, and he started, he actually started Affordable Labs because he wanted to make sure that people could afford appropriate health care. You know, when you go to some of the bigger labs and the charges are just astronomical, he's like, what do you do if you don't have insurance and you're having to cash pay for all this? You know, and cash pay costs were just so high. And, you know, at some point, you know, as a small business owner, you may not have insurance yourself.
Right.
You know,
100%.
he's like, there's no way we can afford this. So that's kind of what he started with, that passion of doing those. So it's carried on now. You know, we charge, of course, you know, we have to make some money to keep the lights on, but there's a substantial difference in what we charge versus the big box places. Like, so, and we typically say it's about a third of whatever you're going to pay at the other places.
Huge.
You know?
Hey ladies, it's Pate with Idell Lane Spa and Boutique, located in Walker. We offer all things skincare, hair care, makeup, spray tan, lashes, and more. And we have a full selection of clothes. And we also do private events from birthday parties, bridal showers, and more. So stop by today and get your queen on, making every woman a queen. See you soon.
You judge everything by your market, you know, when it comes to business and what does the market call for. And if you're a third cheaper than kind of the market, that's huge. I mean, that's the difference between some people being able to afford it and not.
Exactly.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah. And the hard part is that if you have a medical condition that you need lab work for and you have to pay out of pocket and you can't afford it, so you're like, well, do I pay the bills or do I go get this done? I need to get this done to keep me healthy to pay the bills. So you're kind of in a rut.
Yeah.
You know, so this enables them to not have to push it off, because the longer they push it off, they may get worse.
Yeah.
Right. So this helps them to get it in a timely fashion that everybody can afford it.
Yes.
You know,
100%. And you bring up such good points. And I'll say this, we're obviously a big proponent of small business here and private owned businesses. And I think I'm pretty sure that is the number one cause of people not owning their own business is insurance, and the fact that I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I want to do that, but I got to keep my insurance. Right. Not only that, insurance will keep people from like staying in bad marriages because their wife or their husband works for a corporation and they have the insurance, and maybe this person does have a small business they can't afford. It's a sad thing.
Yeah.
I get on a tangent with that. It just, you know, because I feel like it stops people sometimes from achieving what they're really meant to do. Yeah. So you bring up a good point with that. And so, you know, business owners, take note. And I know there's a lot of you that listen. There are options. You don't have to pay that astronomical amount of money in order to like get blood draws and things like that. Well,
and not only that, but a lot of insurances, you have a high deductible, right? So if you got like a $4,000 deductible, you push everything off until you can just like throw money at it once a year, you know? So when you're looking at, okay, I've got a $4,000 deductible and I'm going to have to go to the lab and they're going to charge me $1,500. I don't have $1,500, you know?
Yeah.
So you still put it off, because if your insurance don't kick in, you're paying for it.
That's right.
You know, so
100%. Yeah.
So when you can go into a different lab and you're paying $1,500, or you come to us and you pay $400, you know, okay, well, you know, I mean, you're still paying out of pocket for it, you know, but you turn in your receipt or, you know, whatever. And then, hey, there you go.
Yeah. 100%. So huge advantage there. Now at some point, you eventually bought the business from.
I did.
Tell us about that.
So Ron and working with him, he was such an outstanding, great guy. He was a big guy, so he was like 6'2" or whatever. So he was a man. I mean, he was a big man to begin with, you know. But his heart was even bigger. He was absolutely hands down one of the best bosses I had ever worked for.
Wow.
He loved his people. He loved his patients. You know. He would go with you. There wasn't like he would say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this job and you go do it because I don't want to do it. I mean, anything he asked you to do, he would gladly do it with you or, you know, for you. Yeah. So it's not like he just kind of put all the junk off on everybody. He was there with us in the trenches per se.
Yes.
So, so he and I became, you know, friends, and we talked through the years on and off. You know, he'd text me every once in a while, hey, how's it going? You know, just checking in on you, that kind of thing. So we kept in touch, even while I was in insurance and things like that. And at one point he said, "Hey, what you doing?" I was like, I'm still over here. He's like, "Hey, well, are you happy doing what you're doing?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, yeah, what you got? You need help with something?" He's like, "Well, hey, I'd really like to talk to you about coming to work with me." And, the term "with me," not "for me," didn't catch on to that until later on,
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, well, you know what? I hadn't seen you in a while." He's like, "Why don't you and your husband come over for dinner? Let's come over to the house. We'll have a talk."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Sounds great. I hadn't seen you in a while." So we made a date to go over. And so we went to the house. And when we got there, his wife answered the door. And she said, "Hey, so did Ron tell you he's sick?" And I was like, "Oh, no." So I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we can reschedule." She's like, No, come see." So she walks us through the room, and she walks us to the bedroom, and he's there in the bed. And he was shriveled up to nothing. I mean, from what he was, such a, big barrel of a man, and then he was just emaciated away.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, yeah, so I'm sick." And I was like, "Oh God," So we kind of went through the story. So he had a type of a disorder where his body didn't make enough platelets. So he just couldn't make them. And he had been sick for a while, but didn't tell a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
He was a very private man when it came to that. He didn't want you to feel sorry for him. He was a go-getter. So we talked, and he's like, "Hey, look, what do you think about, partnering with my wife? Because I'm dying. And, and I want my legacy to live on. This has been our baby. We built it from the ground up, and I want to make sure my wife is taken care of. And I think you'd be really good at running it."
Yeah.
So talked about originally, it was supposed to be like a partnership, but when he passed, Sarah, she moved out of state to be with her family and didn't really want to do the partnership part. So I just bought it outright from her.
Yeah.
At that point, because he signed it over to her, and then she signed it over to me, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But he helped from his bed. The last couple of months of his life, he reached out to his clients, which are now our clients.
Sure.
But he reached out to the clients and said, "Hey, look, you remember Missy? She used to be a tech in the field. Well, she's here. She's going to take everything over. She's, going to do great if you need anything." So he kind of made that transition, even, from his deathbed, literally made that transition over. So he kind of passed that on to me. And in our lab office, we have a picture of him and Sarah, kind of like a memorial to him, just so everybody knows the story. And,
awesome.
Many times I think, what would Ron do?
Yeah.
If Ron was in this position, what would he do? He'd know what to do,
Yeah.
So,
That's
but absolutely treating the patients with the dignity and respect, and, understanding that there are people that are in need, having a passion for your patients and having a passion for your own people, your employees, your technicians, knowing that, hey, they're people and they're probably going through some stuff, and, checking in with them, getting to know them, and feeling like a close family, Yeah. And I would say if you asked any of my technicians, I would venture to say they all love their job, and they're always there for each other. So we're a tight-knit small group, I try to have like functions a couple times a year or so for them to get to see each other, because they're all doing their own little assignments. So they really get to like go to an office and really, get to talk to each other.
Right.
So we do little functions to kind of get together, makes them feel like they're, not alone, because you're not, what you're frustrated with and have experiences with, they are too, we all understand. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yes, I had the business from him, and, just trying to grow it. Whenever he passed, it was all kind of on him and his wife. So they weren't able to do as many appointments and see as many patients. So I've kind of gotten all that back going again, and we're able to cover the entire state.
Yeah.
With technicians. So
Wow.
anywhere in the state of Louisiana for homebound patients with Medicare, we're able to go out. Doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
We go out, draw the blood in their home, because we know sometimes it's hard for them to come out. So we do that, as well as do our low-cost cash pay stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah. BJ Pawn and Gun in Denham Springs wants to buy your unwanted gold jewelry, gold coins, and gold bullion. With 30 years of experience operating in the Livingston Parish area, BJ Pawn wants to be your source when selling your gold. So stop by BJ Pawn today for a no-obligation offer. BJ Pawn, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. Yes, and we're going to get into all those services. And one thing I want to ask you is, so you eventually buy the business, and I'm sure after that meeting, you went home and you and your husband had a conversation, and
Right.
and it was probably like, okay, let's weigh the pros and cons, and
Scariest decision probably
it was
made.
like that. You know what I mean? Like I've been there. I know that feeling, and I don't know. I'm sure you were much like me, that you just felt almost pushed into, this is the right decision. This is you know. There's no
and I
no
had a
sure
passion
thing
for it, you know. And I knew how he ran it, because he and I had conversations, so I kind of had an idea about how to go about it. But I was like, man, if nobody does this and nobody takes this over, all of these people are going to lose all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
It's a very unselfish way of looking at it.
The toughest part about it was, I'm one of those people that I love stability, right? So you give me like
me
an
too.
8 to 5 and cha-chonk, and I'm there, and I know that's my job, and I have my rules and my structure, And this is
Electricity
kinda-
goes out, you still getting paid, and
and here we go. Okay. All right. Now, so you're going to jump into it. You're going to run this all by yourself. Like, no pressure.
yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Your bills still get to come in. So that was like a huge decision. My husband has been one of the biggest proponents of my success. He's always, got my back and like, hey, you can do this. I get a little text, you're a rock star. You're awesome. You can do this. And I'm like,
Hashtag
do this.
businesswoman.
And I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, you got this. You're going to figure it out. It's going to be okay. I'm like, yeah, you can do this, old girl. You got this. It's like talking to your old mule.
And you're like, I
Go,
don't
girl, you
got
can do
this. I hear you.
I am not in control.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, shout out Eric. Way to
you
go,
go.
man. Because that's important, is the support of, if you have a spouse or someone very close to you, is that support.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work for a business owner if people aren't on board.
Right.
Either their marriage or relationship is going to go, or that business is going to go.
Right.
Right.
And look, like, just on a side note, Eric, like, not able to watch blood draws. Like, on movies, he's like,
Yeah, I'm that way too. Yeah.
He can't stand any kind of puncturing, so he has no desire to be any part of any of
Oh, that's
this.
funny. Yeah.
And so he's like, I may not be able to go out there and stick people, but I can bring you your coffee in the morning
Yes.
to help you get up and going. So that's what he does. Every morning he brings me my coffee and gets the beast under control.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
good, very good. Now let's get into the services that you offer, and the first thing I want to talk about is, because you brought it up, it was insurance.
Yes.
And you brought up Medicare, so obviously you take Medicare.
Yes.
Let me give you kind of a hypothetical, and you tell me what can be done in this situation. So let's say someone has Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, and they want to get their blood drawn with you. Do they have to have a doctor's order in order to do that? Let's say they just draw their blood themselves just to check their levels every year.
So here's how this works. So we have what we call direct access labs. Now that is when you come in and you say, I just want to see how my cholesterol is doing. I've been on a medicine, but I'm not due to go to my doctor for a little bit, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Just want to see how it's going. Insurance will not pay for labs. It doesn't matter what insurance company.
Yeah.
Unless you have a doctor's order.
Gotcha.
Because the insurance they're only able to pay for what is considered medically necessary.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, they're just throwing money out for just because
Sure.
you thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
So if you have insurance, you have to have a doctor's order.
Yeah.
if you still just want it checked, then that's where it comes that you're going to have to pay for that yourself.
Yeah.
So, we, of course, have cheap labs. So it's not an undue burden, realistically, for you to come in. If you're more concerned than what your doctor's like, we'll check it every 6 months. You're like, well, I really want to check it every 4, every 3 months, whatever. You can come in, and most of our tests, honestly, are under $50 a piece.
Yeah.
Honestly, they're all, depending on what you're getting. So you come in, you pay for your A1C if you're diabetic and you're concerned because you've been not doing well lately. So, you can come in and pay for those. But if you have a doctor's order, we can certainly file it with insurance. Now, so our lab, we take all insurances. There's not an insurance we won't take. So we can process your labs under insurance. And, now, in that, people who have insurance need to remember it's all about the contractual rate.
Yes.
So if you want to file it under insurance, you have to know if you haven't met your deductible or if you have a co-insurance where they're going to say, hey, we're going to charge you 20% or 10% or whatever it is of the contractual rate. So let's say, for instance, if you're getting your thyroid checked, right?
Yes.
Blue Cross or Medicare or whatever, they may say, you know what? We think $130 is a great cost for that test. And I honestly don't know, of course, so just throwing a number out. $130, that sounds like that's a great deal. So they'll say it's $130, right? Our cash cost is $30.
Yeah.
So if you have to pay to meet your deductible, you
just
can go
paid
in and file
$100
it,
more than what you had to.
Exactly. So you can certainly file it under insurance, but we don't know what your rates are. Whatever they've agreed upon. And there's like fee schedules for every insurance, and they're all different. So there's no way for us to tell you right up front, hey, this is all covered. This is not covered. That's between you and your insurance company.
Sure.
But yes, we do take all insurance. But if you still have a deductible out, that's something you're going to have to weigh. Is it better for me to pay cash for it, or is it better for me to file it under insurance?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking the cash. I mean, you're talking not a ton of money to go. And interesting thing I was thinking when you were saying that is, as a business owner of Affordable Labs, you not only have to be an expert blood drawer, but you also have to be an expert insurance person, because it's amazing how you have to learn all these other aspects of business now that you own that business. And trust me, dealing with insurance companies, no fun, no fun at all. So, so that's an interesting little sidebar. And I do have a question. One thing about your business is I feel like it's a huge deal right now because people are more health conscious, and people are more aware of things like blood tests and what they can what you can determine from those. I'm a big proponent of that. I feel like people should get a blood test like every 6 months. This is the reason is you can catch a lot of things early. Just by reading your blood test results. And thyroid, you brought that up. Huge thing right now with both men and women. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day. He didn't realize guys had, could get hypothyroidism, for example. So big for both, but also right now, testosterone is a huge thing with people. They're learning that low testosterone causes a lot more things than they realize.
For men and women.
For men
women
and
a lot
women.
of times don't realize about testosterone.
Yeah, they think if they supplement that or they if they had low testosterone, they have to take testosterone. That they're gonna, grow a beard and it freaks them out, right? And they're gonna grow hair everywhere, and they're gonna get a deep voice. And no, they regulate you to the level you should be at. They don't make you a bodybuilder. So, ladies out there, why I know this information, don't ask, but I'm a research freak, but I can tell you it's a major deal. And the best way you can get, or the only way that I'm familiar with that you can check your testosterone levels, whether you're a male or a female, is through a blood test. Blood tests are amazing because those panels, wow, you can get 100 different tests on one blood panel. So I would personally recommend that everybody do that at least once a year, at least. And that way you can get ahead of something really quick, and there's tons of things you can avoid. Fit Blends of Denham Springs can help you with everything from meal prep to supplements. I love it that they serve breakfast all day in addition to the best ultra healthy wraps you can really get anywhere in Livingston Parish. They are home of the $5 Smoothie Friday and are an amazing sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. Fit Blends Denham Springs, fast, fit food for you. How about vitamin D? I mean, one of the most important things they're finding out.
It is an amazing thing. Vitamin D, either low or high levels, specifically low. There are a lot of people with low and chronically low, myself included.
Sure.
Right. So it's amazing how vitamin D can just affect so many different things. It can make you have symptoms kind of like if you had thyroid problems, right?
Yeah.
So my vitamin D specifically, I'm going to kind of give you a little example. Mine had went so critically low, it actually adversely affected my parathyroid. Not my thyroid, but my parathyroid. So I started having like symptoms similar to like thyroid, and I was going, what is happening? But it just threw everything out of whack. So, took more supplements, and as my vitamin D came back up to normal, parathyroid went back down to normal. So your vitamin levels, a lot of people don't realize they're tired because they don't have the right vitamins. And people say, well, I get out in the sun all the time. Well, that's great. But doesn't mean necessarily that you're absorbing it well enough, you're processing it well enough, it's in your diet well enough, and vitamins are tricky though, because you can't have too much of them. So that's kind of where you really want to do at least once a year, twice a year. If you realize that you have a problem with it to some degree, do not go and say, oh, I had a low vitamin D level, I'm going to just put it on, or vitamin B, because if you take too much, you can have a problem as well. So we always recommend, if you do lab work on your own and come to us and say, hey, I just want to kind of check out things, if you come back and say, hey, I'm high on this, low on this, high on this, low on this, absolutely see your doctor.
Yeah.
So, that's the point when you realize, hey, if it's all normal and you're just trucking along through life, there you go. But if something comes back odd, one, don't ever Google, because you'll have cancer and die in 2 days, right? So, it's just everybody, you're dying,
Yeah.
So don't just, don't become Dr. Google.
Right.
Take your lab work to your doctor, and then let them, because it's like, well, you may have low vitamin D. It could be caused by something else, though. Or you could have, you could be anemic. Well, there's several things that can cause anemia. So the doctor's going to need to really kind of give you a game plan on how to fix that. So don't just go down to, taking vitamins and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, of course, myself, I have, worked with my doctor, and they're like, anytime it gets low, you need to just bump up your dosage, So, but that's an understood thing because we've dealt with it for so long.
Yes.
And I'm just chronically low on it. So, but work with your doctor.
100%.
Absolutely.
And, most people, especially these days, are deficient in vitamin D because nobody goes outside anymore. Everything's conducted indoors, and that's been a big change in the last, I would say, 50 years. But personally, I supplement. I take a vitamin D, and it has like K2 in it, and I supplement that every day. I was not low. I was right on the verge of low vitamin D when I did my last blood test, but that was after supplementing it with just I forget how many IUs I was taking, maybe 10,000 or something. But you bring up another good point, which is you can actually over supplement that.
Yes. And
it's kind of like poisoning yourself if you have too much vitamin D. So you have to be real careful. I've heard some people on Dr. Google tell you take like 50,000 IUs a day. And I'm like, that might be a little bit steep. But
right.
work with your doctor. That is the best
Absolutely.
advice you could ever get. Now, another service you offer is COVID testing. So
Yes.
tell me about that.
So we offer COVID testing by PCR. So we do not do rapid tests, right? We're not going to give you results in 15 minutes off of
Yeah.
a kit. We run everything PCR. It's the gold standard in the industry.
Most accurate.
Okay, absolutely. So, however, we have a couple of options for you. So if you've ever had a COVID test and they shove that Q-tip way up to your brain and dug around a little bit, you realize it's not quite fun, right?
Right.
So if you're completely adverse to that, we also can offer saliva testing as well. So when we do those and we send it off, you get those results next day.
Yeah.
So everybody who's doing like traveling or going to football games or whatever, they're like, hey, we need everybody to be tested and proof of a negative test before you go.
Band. I went and heard my sister, my daughter play. She plays flute, and they had the Baton Rouge Symphony Orchestra. She was fortunate enough to play with them, and went to play. And for me to watch her, I had to have proof of a negative COVID test.
Right. Right.
So,
and it's usually
another good
within
example.
so many hours, they're usually within 3 days.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
And then, so sometimes in our experience before, and we started working in conjunction with a local lab based out of Covington, because we couldn't provide as fast of a turnaround time as they can for that. So, and they can process saliva, right? So you basically just like spit into a tube, cap it off,
Yeah.
and we send it.
Much better than getting the plunger
So-
or whatever.
So they work in conjunction with us on that, and but they're able to process it like next day. So anything that I collect today, it'll result out by tomorrow afternoon. So you're not waiting, the 48 hours, and then sometimes depending on the backlog. So as we see these outbreaks and these new strains coming out, everybody goes and gets tested. Well, when they're sending them in, a lot of times there's so many coming in, it just takes longer to put them in the machine because you can only run so many at a time.
Sure.
Right. But the lab that we're associated with that helps us with these, they absolutely get it back 24 hours. There's not a huge delay. There's never a 48, and beyond.
Yeah.
So you are getting those results back a lot faster now from them. And it is off of saliva as well. So, and it's like 1 milliliter of saliva. So it's for some people, if you're like always dry mouth or like your medicine or something like that kind of works with you, we're probably going to say, hey, let's just do the nasal one because you'll sit there for 25 minutes trying to spit into a tube. But most people, it's certainly not anywhere near as of an invasive procedure,
Fantastic. And in an awesome service there. Now you offer both blood and urine tests.
Yes.
So let's cover that. Is that for like, would that be like if you were an employer and I don't know, somebody got in a wreck and you got to drug test them, that kind of thing?
Yes. So yes, actually blood and urine. Now, so what you're talking about is a drug test. We absolutely do drug testing. We do work with certain companies. They say, hey, we want randoms run and we want pre-employment. Majority of the time it's going to be pre-employment stuff. So they'll send their people over to us. We abide by all the guidelines. We're going to put bluing in the toilet. You can't use the water. We do have sometimes they'll ask us to do an observation, which is clearly not fun for anybody in the situation, but we do offer that. So we can do an observed collection and things like that too. But most often it's just, go in, do your drug testing. So, and we do have low cost drug testing for that. It's $35 per person that comes in. So it's really reasonable for employers to be able to do that too. It's not costing. And then the ones that we're running, we can either run it instant. So we know within 5 minutes and can send you your results back, or we can, do it where it's like on the machine. It tells you like the level of cutoff, so whatever they need, we can run, 5 panel, 9 panel, 12 panel with alcohol. I mean, so we have a whole, so we can tell, if they may not have drugs in their system, but they are clearly having an alcohol issue.
Yeah.
You know? So we can tell
do
you.
drugs.
Nope, don't do drugs. So we can do all of that. So that type of urine testing, of course, we do with employers, but we also do urine testing. A lot of patients who have kidney troubles, especially patients who have diabetes. You know, there's always going to be a urine check to make sure, you know, there's no ketosis and things like that. So we do standard urinalysis. We can, of course, you know, reflex it to a culture to see if you have a UTI. So every urine test that, you know, your doctor can request, we can certainly do all those as well.
Fantastic. And something for business owners, take note of that they can handle those drug and alcohol tests.
Yep. And we also do that mobile too. So sometimes they don't want to have, especially if you're going to do like a random surprise. You know?
Everybody go to the bathroom.
So we come out on site, you know, we make sure everything is secure, no access to water, the whole 9 yards, and we process them on site for them.
Wow.
If there's an accident, say for instance, there's a, you know, your person's driving your company vehicle and they're in an accident, time is always critical, right? So if you're like, hey, I need to know if this person was on drugs at the time of that accident, you know, we can even go out within an hour or so. And while they're on scene processing with the tow truck, the whole 9 yards, you know, we can certainly do that in a timely fashion too. So, of course, you know, we're going to charge a to-go fee.
Oh,
right?
sure. I mean, yeah.
But yeah, so as long as it's within a reasonable amount of time, we can set up a contract. As long as we know that's happening, you know, we can work with an employer and say, hey, what kind of services do you want? And they'll say, hey, I want mobile, I want this. And we'll tell them, okay, this is the on-call number. So we kind of set that up ahead of time, you know, to make sure that we're there and available and on call for their services too. So
fantastic. And that's a great option for business owners out there, because one thing that insurance does, if you're a lawn guy and you have a large crew and you have 4 or 5 trucks on the road, let's say, your insurance rates, you can negotiate lower rates if you offer drug testing.
Right.
And one of the things those insurance companies will require is if someone wrecks a company vehicle, you have to get them to do a drug test, obviously, because if they're on drugs or alcohol and they wreck the vehicle, the insurance company doesn't want to be responsible to pay for that, or they want that person gone, so they want that drug test. Well, that's a service that you will actually get cheaper rates if you offer that drug testing. So Affordable Labs can handle that for you. They can even come to you. So if you suspect the person is drunk or high or whatever, the last thing you want to do is say, okay, you got to go to urgent care, whatever. You know, you can have Affordable Labs come to you and they'll take care of that. So that's a great service. William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance in Denham Springs can service all of your insurance needs. Offering auto, life, health, and commercial insurance, William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance is a proud supporter of Local Leaders, the podcast. Here's another interesting one you offer, DNA services.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So we can do DNA services. Now, everybody knows, you know, if you've ever watched any of the popular shows, you know, you are not the daddy or you are the daddy, you know, that kind of thing. So, of course, that is a standard paternity DNA test.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that people, I guess, don't really understand about DNA testing, right? So you can certainly go down the street, get something at like Walgreens or whatever and do your DNA test. Well, that's not legal and admissible in court, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no validation of who actually took the test. Okay. So we offer 2 different kinds of like paternity testing, for instance. This is our biggest, most requested test, right? Somebody needs to know whose child this is.
Yeah.
So we either do it for informational purposes, which means you're not going to use it for court, child custody, child support, anything like that.
Yeah.
So you just want to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's the legal one as well, which means it is admissible in court. You can use it for anything, right? Yeah. Social Security benefits. A lot of people don't understand that if you have a child and you're, you know, everything's great with the 2 parties, you're not asking anybody for, you know, custody or child support, but still at the end of the day, if the father of that child passes away from a car wreck or whatever, that child would be entitled to Social Security benefits, but only with a legal DNA test.
Yes.
So there's always that, whether you're like, hey, we're not getting in the middle of this, it's just no biggie. Just remember that as well. So those are the two types of testing. What makes them different is for a legal one, we validate who you are. So we have to see your ID. We have to take a picture of you. It's very like structured as far as that goes, right? So everything is submitted with it to make it a legal test. Now with a non-legal, you can walk in and say, I'm Beyonce. Absolutely. We don't ask who you are for verification of who you are, but also if they're coming in split and we have like the mother and the child and the alleged father come in, she can say, okay, he's going to come in tomorrow. He could send his friend.
Yeah.
We're not going to ask. Right. So, but that's why, and absolutely it has happened more often than people realize.
Wow.
More often. So yes, if there's any concern about any of that for whatever reason, always opt for the legal one, So, but yes, we do paternity testing, but it's really interesting. If the father or the alleged father is not available, we can test his brother or his sister.
Yeah.
It's called an avuncular test. So sometimes the father is deceased, or, the father's in another country or whatever have you. We can actually test their relatives. We can test grandparents to show that was the child's father. And then we can also do kind of after the fact, we can also collect for deceased. So if someone has died, we do work with the coroner's offices and funeral homes and things like that. We can go out and collect even at that point.
Wow.
To do that, because of course, when someone passes away, there's always that whole heirship thing,
Sure.
And a lot of times you mean to do it, you mean to get it done, and the name on the birth certificate and everything, but you don't ever get around to it.
Yeah.
And then something bad happens.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot more of it now with COVID because it's a real thing. It's people are going in the hospital with COVID, and then it's like, well, we didn't expect them to pass away when they were 45.
Yeah.
We thought we had time. So, of course, there's always car wrecks and things like that. But
Sure.
But we have seen a higher rate of that happening now just because of what's happened in the world,
Wow. It's just amazing what you can do with blood tests now and and all of those sorts of things. And there's DNA tests, there's urine tests, and you can read all these things from them. I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
But honestly, Affordable Labs, they offer all of these services. And the amazing thing is you can do the mobile testing. Right. So if it's an Alzheimer's patient or I'm sure many examples of the types of patients that you can go to that just cannot, they're bedridden or whatever.
Anybody, of course, mobility challenged, if it's, they are in a wheelchair. So you're going to have somebody that's going to have to wheel them out to the vehicle, get them into the vehicle, put the wheelchair in and that whole mobility, the time frame that it takes and the effort to get people to coordinate that and take off of work, because you may be the child of an elderly patient and their caregiver whenever they have to go to the doctor. So you have to arrange with your job to take off work, to go get them, take them to Baton Rouge or whatever to do their labs and stuff, and then bring them back home. So it's like a 4-hour production most of the time, but we can arrange to go out to them. So, that they're at home, they're in their familiar place, especially like with Alzheimer's and dementia patients, they're in their area. You're not bringing them to some place they don't know where they are. So they're familiar in their home, they're comfortable, bedridden, all of that stuff. Or even just like immunocompromised patients who, and not just like an organ transplant or something like that, but, if they've had, if they have diabetes, even if they have COPD, they're immunocompromised, whatever, it may not be like required medically that they stay home necessarily, but you may want us to come out just to keep them kind of, in a safer spot, right? Because their house is clean and disinfected and stuff like that.
That's right. I mean, during COVID, when that, and I say during COVID, it's still around, but not to the level it was in March of 2020 when we all thought we'd die if we breathed on each other and all of that. So it's gotten a little bit better on that respect, but that was a service that was a necessity back then. It was kind of like telehealth, and that was a necessity back then. So another amazing service that you offer, and the great thing is you go all over the state of Louisiana. You're not limited to Livingston Parish and Ascension and Baton Rouge. If you're listening to this right now and you're in Lafayette, they can help you.
Right. And so going mobile, of course, if you have Medicare Part B, right, so original traditional Medicare, or you have a Medicare replacement plan, we can go to those patients with no cost to them. Amazing. Outside of Medicare, none of the other insurance groups will pay us a portage fee. Yeah. So that fee has to be taken on by the patient. Yeah. Now, depending on how far out it is and things like that, because we are coming from Baton Rouge, you know, so we do pay our technicians for their mileage and things like that because it may take them 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back. And that's, that's a 4.5 hour deal, so we do have to pay them. So we may end up charging like a portage fee for us to go out, a concierge fee to go out to the home. So that is, paid for by the patient, or the patient's family or whatever. So, but depending on how far out, just to kind of give you somewhat of an idea. So in the city of Baton Rouge, if you have a Baton Rouge zip code, so even like Central is Baton Rouge 70818, right? So if it says Baton Rouge and that zip code, your fee for us to come out is $25 to come out to your home. That's that's totally worth it. Right. So outside of that, so places like Denham Springs, Zachary, Prairieville, Gonzales, and all that, in that kind of a radius, it's $40. And so you can see it just kind of goes out a little bit further and further and further. So the further out you get, and we base that off of round trip mileage from our lab. So, so it's really not, super expensive, especially if you're trying to weigh the cost of, I have to take off of work for 5 hours. How much money am I going to lose for that?
Some people have to rent a van. Right. To get them, a handicap equipped van maybe to bring them somewhere.
Right. But again, older patients, people on Medicare, disabled patients, we can go to those. Yes, that is covered by Medicare. So, but we do cover the entire state. So, we can certainly, if it's just a private, they're like, hey, I'm out in Monroe, I want somebody to come out to see me. We can certainly work up a quote to do that for them. And be able to come out even if they're not on Medicare. So
fantastic. Yep. Now we've talked about a lot of services that you offer today, and of course the COVID testing, of course the urinalysis, and the obviously blood test, DNA services, mobile services. Pretty much, if you need anything in that realm, they can do it. And And so let's say, 100 people heard this right now and they want to reach out. How would they go about doing that?
So they can go to our website to get a lot of the information, and we have like a contact us form if they just kind of want to, hey, I don't have time to call in. Yeah. They can go to our website, and it's www.goforblood.com, and it's go. Spelled Geaux because we're in Louisiana.
That's right.
So it's Geaux, then the number 4 and the word blood.com. So they can go there. Of course, it has our phone number, fax number, stuff like that as well. Our hours of operation, location. They can give us a call. Our phone number is 225-389-5020. So they can call us or go to our website. There's contact forms, email addresses, the whole 9 yards. If it's a doctor that wants us to service their patients, we do have a part on our website for them. It's under the provider section. So they can go to that section, download one of our requisitions, fill it out with all the information for their patient, fax it to us as soon as we get the order. We typically have a turnaround time of about 3 business days. So from the day that we get the order, within 3 business days, we're usually out to see the patient.
Wow.
So,
That's pretty quick, especially these days. So there's no doubt about it.
As long as they answer the phone. Sometimes, you know, when we do get like the out of area stuff. So if we're like Lafayette or Shreveport or whatever, sometimes they're like, oh, is that 225? What's that? You know, it's not for your car warranty.
Right.
Yeah. So, but so as long as the patients know that we're going to be calling them, you know, they're kind of expecting that. But the providers can go on. They don't have to like call us or whatever. We can do any test, any test that they can imagine. We could check you for shrimp allergies. I mean, whatever they want, you know. So whatever they ask us to do, we can do all tests. We're a fully functional lab, and we can go out and do that. So there is that section for providers if doctors' offices want us to do that as well.
Fantastic. And last question. Let's say you were someone that did want to check your blood, and like we were talking about earlier, that I like to do those blood tests at least once a year. Right. Well, in my case, every 6 months, just because I'm weird like that. But let's say you wanted to check that. Do you also run the results, or do you draw the blood and then that's kind of where your job ends?
No. So what happens is, say, Jim, if you wanted to come over and say, hey, I want my hormones checked, I want my thyroid checked, you know, you just give us a list. So we will we'll run all the blood. We have it processed, and then so whenever we're done with all that, you're going to get a results page. It's super simple to read. You know, even yourself. So everybody gets all like, maybe not scared, but a little anxious about it. Like, oh, I don't know how do I know what it is?
Yeah.
You know, so don't feel like you're going to have to like call somebody up and be like, I need you to interpret this. It's pretty simple. So you're going to have like the test. This is the test that was run. This is what it was for you. So it's going to be like 1.0, 5.0, whatever the number is on you.
Yeah.
And then it's going to have like a flag group. So it'll either say low, literally low, or high, or it'll have an L or H, right? So it'll say, you know, like your iron. You check your iron and it says low. You know your iron's low.
Yeah.
But out to the right, it says this is your reference range. So reference ranges are based on like a general average across America kind of a thing. So if it's supposed to be between 25 and 50 and yours is at 10, you'll see mine was at 10. It's supposed to be 25 to 50 and it's low. And it'll say in bright colors, low. So then you take that and say, I have low iron. So you say, I need to call my doctor.
Yeah.
So you just take that paper. So yes, we do result that out. Whenever we see the patient, and a lot of people don't understand this, but we cannot, if you do not give us like your email address on site, when we say, hey, you are Jim, I'm going to draw your blood.
Yeah.
How do you want your results? If you're like, oh, I'll come by and pick them up, or, oh, you know, you can mail them to me or whatever, that will do whatever you ask us to do. But if you say, hey, I want you to email them to me, we'll take down your email address. We'll make sure that we wrote it down correctly, and then we'll email it to you. So we can do that with our encrypted email.
Oh, good.
But if you don't give us your email, like while we're there with you, you can't just call someone and say, hey, I can't make it over there. Can you email it to me? You could be.
Yeah, you could be. That's right.
So we're very, very strict. My staff is very strict about, like, we do not release results that we have not verified before. And it is a pain sometimes. You're like, man, I should have just had them email it to me. It would have been easier. But that's just something we cannot do because we
HIP
don't
is a
want
big
somebody
thing.
out. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, there's always that too. Hey, I did this, but can you send it to my doctor? No, I cannot. Not without you coming in here. You know, if you've paid for it yourself, you come to me. I'm going to have to see your driver's license matched up with your lab because I can't over the phone just like release it to Dr. So-and-so.
Right.
You know, like again, whenever we're doing it, we can fax it to your doctor. We can fax it to 5 doctors. You know, so whatever the patient tells us at that point in time, we can certainly do that. Now, there is that whole thing. If a doctor's requesting, you got your doctor's order, then, you know, another doctor calls up and says, hey, you know, I need to get a copy of it. We do make that doctor send over a signed consent of release from, you know, that you've signed with them. So there's still all the same processes as far as that goes. But as far as you doing it yourself, we can send it to you in an email, mail it to you, print it out and have you come pick it up. You know, we do not interpret results though. We're not going to say, hey, it looks like you have this because based on your labs, that we cannot diagnose you. So
Gotcha.
if you have a question about like, hey, is this high or low? We can say, see where it says low or see where it says high. So we can tell you like, this is your number. You see
Sure.
this, kind of go through that with you. But realistically, we can't tell you what that means.
100%. 100%. So visit with your doctor on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming by today. Did you have a good time?
I did. I had a great time.
We've been going for an hour and 4 minutes.
Wow.
And look, I could go for another 3 hours and 4 minutes. And the people that are listening right now are probably like, no, that's too much Jim for one day. They'd be right. So thank you for coming by. This has been very informative. I don't think people realize how important what you do is from the aspect of today's times, and making it convenient for people. Being able to go mobile is huge. When I heard about this business, I was like, man, this person has got to come on the show. I mean, this is something that business owners and doctors' offices and everybody can benefit from. So thank you for your service to the community by doing what you do with Affordable Labs. Yeah. We appreciate it.
And I did also want to mention, I know we hadn't talked about it, but for small businesses like myself that are part of Moxie.
Yes.
We do Moxie for any and all services
I'm
that we have.
glad you mentioned that. Dane won't be mad at me now. You never said anything about it.
Right. So if there is, if there is a business that needs us to run those drug screens, we can absolutely do that for them on Moxie. So any of our services, our blood services, COVID testing, urine testing, all of that, we accept Moxie for everything, including our, like I said, our DNA and stuff like that too. So
100%. And so for those listeners out there that aren't familiar, Moxie is part of a trade exchange. Well, Moxie is the trade exchange. iTrade Exchange is the local Livingston Parish area part of Moxie, but it's accepted all over Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi. They're working on some stuff in Florida. So just a great organization where it's basically a barter network, and you trade out services. I am also a member of Moxie here at Local Leaders of Podcast. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah,
I know Dane appreciates that.
Shout out to Dane.
Shout out, Dane. Dane Arnold with iTrade Exchange has been enabling small business in the Livingston Parish area to save cash through his network of over 300 participating Livingston Parish businesses. Saving cash by trading services with other exchange members is what iTrade Exchange is all about. For more information, contact Dane Arnold at 225-205-3640 or visit iTradeExchange.biz. So thank you for coming by. Thank you to all the listeners that listen and support us here at Local Leaders of Podcast and everything we're doing. Thank you to our sponsors who, honestly, we could not do anything without all of those folks and their support. We really appreciate that. I do want to mention LOPA, the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. This is kind of a nonprofit that we really support here at Local Leaders of the Podcast. They are doing great things, and they are giving, so consider giving the gift of life. If you're in Sao Paulo, Brazil, I don't even know if that's a real, don't Google that, but one of those places in Brazil, and you want to be an organ donor, go to lopa.org and get information. Give the gift of life. It is so very important to do that. So thank you to LOPA for all they do as a nonprofit. Once again, I am Jim Chapman, reminding you, love your community, support local business just like Affordable Labs, and keep leading. Thank you very much. Tiffany C-Card with Home Key Mortgage combines the experience and knowledge you need to make your mortgage loan a smooth, stress-free process. Reach out to Tiffany for more information on the vast mortgage programs available in the Livingston Parish area. Tiffany C-Card of Home Key Mortgage, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.